Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach, and I spent some time looking at this one. And this is leading to a kind of a question as to how far do I make this code generation test project go? Like how generalized do I want to make it? I'm really trying to find issues that I can reproduce in tests that I have ownership of the types, and it is a legitimate issue in rocks, and move on from there. This one with the compute sharp is potentially an issue, but the problem is this. When I was talking about, let me get rid of some of these things here. I think it was in the extensions here, which I say here, when I'm getting a type definition that I'm not doing as much as I should and be very generalistic about int or object. And in some cases it doesn't work. This one's going to be a little tricky because the constraint is, one, it has to be unmanaged, which means it has to be a struct that could be a pointer. There's more language around that, but basically something like this. Okay. But it also has to implement this interface. Now, this library, this compute sharp library, is kind of interesting because when you define this, if you don't make this a partial, what it's actually doing is running a source generator, I believe, to say, oh, by the way, you need to implement this. If I say, go to definition, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of definitions here now. This is auto-generated. So all this stuff is stuff that I don't generate. So I have to make it a partial. And then this needs to be implemented. And if I implement it, if I make this default, then it will work. Okay, at least now the definition doesn't give any errors. But that's what I need to pass in here. I can't pass in an int because even though that would match the unmanaged constraint, it wouldn't match this one because it doesn't implement this interface. So where do I go from here? Well, I could start doing things like generate this type and make sure it's a partial, and then anything that the type parameter is constrained to, like another type, put that in there. But I was thinking about that kind of on a different thread in my head this morning, and I said, I'm not really, thrilled about that because I can see this exploding out of control. Okay. Now, this NuGet host project, this is referencing this latest package here. Okay. And I believe if I go to the folder here, I believe this is actually, maybe it's not. Maybe it isn't. Okay. That might be the way to go with this, which is to say, oh, do I have a NuGet config here? And I could say, well, I want to just open it with a text editor. Oh, come on. Really? Rocks bin release. Yeah, so it does do rocks local source. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that that's at the root here. So I could say reference the alpha one. And if I come back here, yeah, if I say here, manage dependencies. And I say rocks local source. There's an alpha one here because we keep making it, which is fine. What I could do is in here, in this project, is say, you know what? I want to create a type of this case, and start using this to, it's not for code generation per se, but this will run things in a way that I think make a little bit more sense. Because the reason why this is failing right now, if I come back to the errors here, is because the the type int can't be used in here. And so it's giving a problem. And that's just a bug in the fact that I'm giving the wrong type. This class struct unmanaged, not null, and default constraints cannot be combined or duplicated. That's an interesting one, and I might need to look at that a little bit harder. Okay. And I don't think that relates to anything here. If I remember right, all these are different, like transform mappers. But this, yeah, the errors here are for different reasons. So I just want to eliminate the first thing, which is, let's see if this works by referencing something like this. Okay. I just don't want it to fail. That's what I want to do. And then I can put a note up here saying, you know, we can bring it back in, but be careful. Okay. So if I came into here, and let's actually pull this into its own method. Yes. Run test case. There. Okay. Now this, it doesn't know what this is. Okay. And unfortunately, it's not smart enough to pull that in. I was hoping it would be a little bit smarter than that, but not quite. Okay. Sure. So now you know what that is. Okay. So now what we want to do is say, and I want to change this to being, I noticed the little helper there now is different. It pops up there. It doesn't go up over there. Whatever. So now we want to say static void run that. Okay. And we'll put that up here as a case. Go away. I don't know why you're there. And we need the struct type. We need to say for our expectations is equal to rock create that. And then expectations, I have no idea. Methods, it's not even finding one because, you know, reasons. We could say create. You're going to have a create method there, right? Let's just see if this builds. The typer namespace. Okay, so this is what we created using, oh, well, that's sucky. I thought we didn't do that. Well, it's doing stuff. Here's a funny thing is, well, yeah, it's going to, the rules from Compute Sharp are going to kick in and go, you can't throw an exception, because when I did that before, you notice it gave an error saying that. So it might already be like this, but yeah. So this is bringing up another little interesting thing, which is we should not. Okay, sorry, I got distracted there. So I think we have a bug here in that if this namespace gatherer here, where is that? We're just adding them. Like, I never checked to see namespace equals. Oh, how do you get? Like if it's not the global namespace, but we can't do that in a ternary. We have to break that out. And namespace here is just a string. So as long as it's not like is null or empty, that would be another thing we could do. And then for all of the things here, if it's not. So we have some work to do in that we need this not to add in global namespaces because we don't want those. Well, that's in the global namespace, right? There's a test here. Yeah. And we don't have a namespace here, and you'll notice we don't generate it. So it's got to be a different spot where this is coming in. But I think the place to handle this is in the namespace gatherer. So do we have tests around, where is this? Here. This might be a little interesting because like I want to be able to add a namespace that is the global namespace. Excuse me, I have the feeling that my entire family has just cough allergies, something, school started up. My younger son is staying home today. He has a low-grade fever and not feeling well, and, stuff happens. Wonderful. Okay. So we would expect this to be 1 because you don't want to. And what are we doing when we're getting namespace symbol here? We get declared symbol of type syntax. Okay. I don't know how you say give me a type that is not in a namespace. Like I have no namespace would be the only thing I could think of here. So wait a minute. Let's do this. Let's say add namespace from type and global namespace. Okay. And so what I would imagine here is if I did this and I say name, I am in global namespace. Okay. Just, oh my God. We don't care anything about this. We don't want it there. We don't want it there. We can make this as small as possible. Public. That's all we care about. It's just that it is not in a namespace. Okay. So here we're going to say type of I am in global namespace. And this should be equal to 0. Since there's nothing in there, that would be the only thing. Now, if I run this test, what we would want to say is we're not adding it because it's not part of the, it's part of the global namespace, and we don't want to put that at the top. And it failed because it's adding it. Right. So now if I debug this, it's funny because this has nothing to do with, I think, the thing we found from the compute sharp stuff, but it's interesting because let's type, if we hover over it and we go, what's your namespace, is null. Yep. It might also be, I think, if you're in the global namespace, it might sometimes be like : global, : I think sometimes, but this is what we want. Okay. So we want to say here that when we add, if not string is null or white space. I noticed they fixed the thing where string was always getting capitalized. I think in the latest release of Visual Studio, that's type dot namespace. I don't think there's a global namespace thing here. No, it's just namespace is a string. Yep. And so if that's true, then we'll add it. There's one thing I've noticed when I was running all these tests this weekend that I think, and I have an issue out there for rocks called like the type problem, which is I might consider, I'm still considering, rather than trying to resolve all type names and stuff like that and namespaces, is to actually fully qualify the type names everywhere. That wouldn't look great, but it would accomplish what I need, which is I don't see the thing is when you see them in your code, you would see these fully qualified names everywhere. And that looks kind of ugly from an IntelliSense standpoint. But it would eliminate any issues of what namespace are you in. So I don't know. I'm debating that. Okay, so we took care of the type one. What about a symbol? I want to get a symbol. There won't be a declaration namespace syntax for this one because it's not there. There is no namespace to find. So I would think we're saying namespace get name here, and that gives you a string. And so this is just adding to the builder, which is not what we want. What we could do is say the same thing here. We could say we could all route to this. Okay. So now if you add a type, this just says this dot add type dot namespace. Okay. And so now this becomes expression body member. We would want to change this to being a question mark because it is possible we could add one there. Okay. And then this one also does this dot add, except what's adding is that. Because get name will return a string. That all comes into here. Why are you complaining? I'm checking to say if you're not null or white space, you should know. It's not a discard. Oh, that's right. Here too, we would want to say, no, we want to do if namespace is global. If it's not the global namespace, then add it. Okay. Here we're just saying add the type. Here you're saying a string. And I really don't know what your problem is. You should know by flowing that that would be not null, but whatever. So we want to say namespace is select, we add a range. So we're going to have to change this now to saying use block. We want to say for each var namespace in namespace is this dot add namespace. There. Okay. And that should get rid of any check that we always will make sure that you are not in a global namespace as much as possible. And again, if there's a check here that we would see global or something like that, I can add that in here when the time comes. We could also do something here to say where not is global namespace select get name. There we go. Now if I come back to namespace gatherer tests here, these should all still pass. And I would believe everything would pass because we would not be doing that. I'm kind of curious though, if we come back to this generated code and I come back to this program here, like now what would this do? Would we still see, or do I have to shut down startup again because it's bound to that new, it's bound to that 7.0, but even if I'm updating the package, it doesn't actually update it here. Yeah, it's still failing. Oh, Matt. So let's shut down startup again and let's see if that gets rid of the global namespace. If not, no, then we got Well, I know I can look for that text and see where is that coming from. So hold on. Okay, it's still doing it. And I want to make sure I just did a build clean. Okay. So now if I look in rocks, source, rocks, bin. Oh, I forgot. Release. Yeah, this is from like 4 days ago. It's looking at that directory, which let's do build configuration manager. There we go. So now let's build again. And I might have to shut down and start up again and rebuild this because I need to make sure that it's actually getting the build of the package. This is the problem, is that if I keep rebuilding the package, it doesn't mean it's actually catching it. This is a kind of a pain in the butt. If what I just made any sense whatsoever. Yeah, it's still doing it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it might need to like it saw it and then it caches it and it doesn't actually load from that one. And this might be a real big problem because, like I just said, clean. So it cleaned that one, but hold on. Let me restart this again. I might actually have to reload from, like, actually clear my entire cache, which would suck, or just find the 7.1 there and then reload this again. Hold on. Okay, so it's still doing it. So what I'm assuming is something must be passing it in here from somewhere. And if I say here, because everything routes to this. So if it's not equal, if it's not that, and it does not, and namespace does not equal global namespace. Because I believe that's the actual literal text that's coming through. And that's what we don't want. Okay. And so I had to make sure that I cleared it out. I cleared it out from here. And the one thing too that might be a little bit problematic is, this is from today. I really hope it's not pulling this from NuGet, because I think I have a 7. I think I do. Like if I go to NuGet here and I say rocks, I believe I have one out here. Yeah, there's actually one out there of that. And that's not the one I want. I want the one that's here locally. And so that's what I'm a little concerned about, is that I don't think, let's do this. Packages, rocks, delete that. But now let's come into our repos and let's go to rocks. And what I want to do is nuke that here and only have it here. Okay. So in other words, what I'm saying is I should not see that package source in any of the other projects. It should only be available, at least from my understanding, for the CS proj file. I don't really know though. This is starting to get a little hairy. Okay, we don't have that anymore. Let's try this again one more time. If this doesn't do anything, then too bad. And it's still failing, and it's still generating. It's still generating this. I am not convinced that it's actually, like, I don't know how else it would be able to do this, because I am almost 100% positive we do not ever add a namespace unless it goes through a namespace gatherer. We have some of these, but these are all like things that we know. These are all things like from rocks. There's no reason that Chuck4 is not null or that. We don't need to do that anymore. because we know that the namespace thing is going to be that. One thing I'm curious about is if I come back up here, like if I say manage NuGet packages here, I would assume, yeah, it doesn't see that one. But if I come to NuGet host and I say manage NuGet packages, yeah, it doesn't see it at all. So it's actually going out to NuGet and finding it. And that's not what I want. So moving that was not a right idea. Never ends. It never ends. So we want to put this back here. But now the odd thing is that everyone would be able to see it. And that's not necessarily what I want either. Yeah, and well, now it's not going to see it because I don't think it picks it up because the solution is loaded and it just doesn't find it. I don't think it's going to find the NuGet package that I want though. So I'm out of time and I'm kind of stuck. I don't know how to, I think this found a little bit of a thing in that the namespace gatherer is a little bit more robust now. We won't allow it has to be not null and it cannot be a global namespace. But I don't know how to actually verify this so that if I make a type of this, it's going to work. Because it's going to try to go out to NuGet, not locally. And as long as it keeps doing that, it's not going to give me the implementation that I need. So I'm going to stop here and mull over this for a little while and come back to this. In the next episode, I hope to have a resolution and we can move on. Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.